Hello and welcome back. Professor Plyman here, and today we're going to talk about research in college and how good writers find information. So, research isn't looking for answers, it's looking for evidence. A lot of times, students go into the research process thinking that they just need to find a couple of quotes to plug into their essay. But that's really missing some important opportunities in critical thinking development and even writing development. So, what is research? It's not just Googling until you find something that reinforces your idea. College research consists of asking a question, looking for evidence, and then following where the evidence leads. Sometimes the information that we find might surprise us, and that's an indication that you have fully embraced the research process. So, good research starts with curiosity, not certainty. So the best way to demonstrate curiosity is probably to start with a question. You're not going to research a topic, you're going to research a question. So for example, a topic might be something like climate change. But a question is going to be, how is climate change impacting Texas agriculture? Or maybe you want to be even more specific and ask a better question. How are Texas farmers adapting to prolonged drought? The more specific your question becomes, the easier your research process gets. Now, sometimes as humans, we have a tendency to get discouraged if something doesn't work the first time. Let me warn you that your first search will probably be terrible. Just like the first time we do anything. If I were to hand you a violin and you're not a violin player, and I said, play me something, it probably wouldn't sound great. But if you practiced, if you learned about it, if you took lessons, if you did it over and over again, you would probably improve. Research is like that. So students will also often search things like social media is bad, and then they don't quite get the results that they're looking for. Instead, you could try something like the effects of social media on adolescent mental health. We're a lot more specific there. And then maybe you're going to go to screen time and sleep quality, or look at how social media impacts body image. And then by adding words like peer reviewed, once again, we're going to get a different level of research results. Your research improves as your search terms improve. And searching is a skill that you can and must work on. In a lot of ways, research is like following breadcrumbs. One good thing often leads to another. So when you find something that you like, look at who the author in your research source is citing. Look at studies that they reference, keywords that they use, organizations that they mention, and then go and follow those breadcrumbs. Good researchers rarely find everything they need with one search. So where should you search? My first advice is don't just Google it. There are a million things that Google is good for, but academic research really isn't one of them. And there is Google Scholar, but if you just open up a Google window, you're probably not going to get what you're looking for. So maybe you want to start with the Dallas College Library. Different academic databases, books, some government websites, professional organizations. And once again, a lot of this is going to depend on what you are researching. If I am looking at population increase in Texas, the census makes a bunch of sense for me to be looking at. But if I am looking at the impacts of climate change, I'm probably not going to pick up a census. So just think about what it is you're looking for and what makes the most sense in terms of your research. It's also important to search smarter. There are millions and billions of things on the internet, and you don't want to wade through all of them. So topics like social media or AI or climate change, even fast food or college, is going to lend too many results. Instead, think about your topic and your question. So, how does social media impact teen mental health? Or how has artificial intelligence impacted college level writing? What is the impact of climate change in Texas agricultural? What is the link between fast food and obesity and adolescence? How are first generation college students finding success? And as you can see, each of these better search terms are based on a question, and then I took out some of the unnecessary words. Now, sometimes, even if you feel like you have enough, you might still get too many results. Here's where you're going to really play with your search terms. Try adding more specific words: age group, location, time period, population, effect, or impact. So for example, instead of social media, try social media and sleep quality and college students. And that's going to give you a different level or a different type of results that are going to be way more specific to what it is you're actually looking for. Now, there are some terms that I want you to be aware of. If you use and, or not, specifically in capital letters, this is going to do a specific job, whether you're searching in Google or the Dallas College Library database. So for example, if you put and in there, it will narrow down your search. If you're going to put or, that is going to include things like synonyms, teenagers or adolescents. And if you're going to put not, that removes unwanted results. So think about how you can use these terms to be more specific in what you're searching. Now, the reality is you're probably going to get a lot of sources the first couple of searches. So here's my suggestion. Do not read everything. You're going to start with the title. If the title sounds promising, then look at the abstract. Peer-reviewed articles are going to have an abstract. This is a less than 1-page summary about what the article contains. A lot of times these peer-reviewed articles are going to be dozens of pages long. You do not want to read a 30-page article to realize it doesn't actually help your research anyways. Read the abstract first. Then look at the headings. If you're like, okay, I think this makes sense for what I'm doing in my research, then you're going to go and look at the conclusion. If you've done all of those and it still seems like this is a good option for what you need, then that's when you save that source. Don't just save a source because it might be related in some way to what you're talking about. Go in and do some reading, do some skimming, and hit these 4 major pit stops: title, abstract, headings, and conclusion. This will save you a ton of time in college. Now, when you find a source that you do like, take notes while you read. Don't just highlight. Point out the author's main point and write it down on your paper or on your notebook where you're taking notes. If you find an interesting statistic, Circle it and write it in the margin. This will make it easier for you to go back and find it. Same thing with a useful quote. Why is it useful? What you find useful the first time might slip your mind, and you might go back and think like, why did I highlight this? Jot down a note. If you still have questions, write them on your paper. You know your research is not done yet. You have more questions to answer. And then ask yourself, how does this connect to my paper or my topic or my essay? Write it down. Remember that research is thinking. It's not just copying something down and putting in your paper. And good research should change your mind. When you find something that proves that you're wrong, that's okay. Strong writers follow the evidence. Weak writers ignore it because they don't want to change their mind. So don't force the evidence to fit your opinion. Instead, you're going to do the research to find the answer to the question. And the reality is, for the vast majority of the work that you do in college, you do not need 40 sources. Most college papers need several strong sources. So it's much better to get several strong sources instead of dozens of weak ones. Sometimes I will look at papers and they have 20 sources when I asked for 4. But the majority of those sources didn't really contribute much to their work. So we're definitely looking at quality over quantity as professors when we read your work. So I do want to take some time to address some common research mistakes that students make. The first one is starting the night before. You are not giving yourself time to ask a question, to look for evidence, to process your learning, to reflect on what you've read, and to incorporate it into your work if you're doing this the night before. What happens when students wait to the last minute is that they're often just looking for a few quotes that they can plug in. I know we talked about this the first week of class. Remember that the goal here is not that final product. Your goal is learning and developing your thinking skills. If you're just looking for quotes to plug in, then you are completely missing the point of academic research. A lot of times students never read past the first paragraph of the source that they have found. Give yourself enough time to really get in there and see what these sources are saying. Sometimes students only use Google and they miss out on some great research sources. Your college library database has a ton of resources available to you that, the college paid a ton of money for, and use them, right? Your tuition is going to pay for those resources. So make sure that you are using what is available to you. Sometimes students will copy information without really understanding it. Once again, this is missing the point of research, the development in your thinking, learning, and writing. And the last mistake I have up here is probably one of the most frustrating ones. It's happened to every single person who made it all the way through college at least once, forgetting where the information comes from. You read a good quote, maybe you even wrote it down, but now you can't find it in your research sources. This is where those really good notes come in. So make sure that you are spending time with your research sources, but you're also documenting the process, so when you go back and put your work together, you know where everything is. I also want to address a common misconception when it comes to the timeline of research. A lot of times students think that the process will be very linear. It will be, research, then writing, then you're done. And that is just not the reality for most academic research. Instead, you are going to choose a topic and ask a question and search and read and take notes. And maybe you come up with a new question or you edit your question, and then you're going to search again and you're going to have to organize your ideas. You're going to write. You're going to realize that you need more. You're missing evidence, so you're going to have to go back and search again and revise again. The point that I'm trying to make is that research happens all throughout the writing process. It is not a one and done type of deal. Now, students ask me all the time, can AI help you research? The answer is kind of, if you use it wisely. Here's some good uses for AI. Have a conversation with the LLM and say, hey, this is what I think I want to write about. What are some good keywords I could research? You can ask it to explain difficult concepts. You can ask it to summarize the notes that you took, or even help you generate follow-up questions. Here's how you can't use AI in research. Finding your citations for you. The hunt is part of the learning process. Also, if you ask AI to generate a citation for you, there's a good chance that it's just going to make it up. Even if you give AI the article, you can put the article in AI and say, give me a quote from this article, and it still sometimes hallucinates something. So you have to go back and read the entire thing anyways to make sure that it's in there. It's quicker just to find your own quotes. Decide what you want to paraphrase. Decide what you want to summarize. You obviously cannot use AI to write your own paper, and you should not be using AI to replace your reading. Remember that we're only going to start with those 4 things: the title, the abstract, the headings, and then the conclusion. It really doesn't take that long to read those, and that's going to eliminate a good chunk of pieces that aren't really valuable for your research purposes. So the few things that you find that you really need to lean into, spend some time and you read them yourself. So how do you go into this with a research mindset? One of the things that I want you to do is really think about how research isn't just proving that you're right. It's about discovering what is true. So as a researcher, I want you to stay curious and to stay open-minded.